Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Doug, the retirement guy with all your monthly ETFs. This is a question I get continuously from people from my Patreon side of things, our YouTube comments, our YouTube getting emails from people from YouTube. Is the question really comes into is retiring early with dividend income. How do you retire early? How do you retire with dividend income? All the questions kind of relate right back to retiring early with dividend income, especially when people start finding out I've been living off of dividends for well over 10 years already. And they start questioning, how did you do it? How did you plan? How do you know how much you needed? How did it all work? Where'd you find your funds? And it just goes on and on and on. So I thought this would be a prime time to put together probably a little mini series of a step-by-step guide to financial independence by using dividend income to fund your future retirement. So I kind of put this video together. Let's get into it. Let's explain everything about retiring early with dividend income. Well, the first thing we need to understand is going to be a dividend. What are the fundamentals of a dividend? What it really is it? Well, what dividends are is a portion of a company's profits distributed to its shareholders. Or in cases like ETFs, the profit that it generates goes out to the shareholders. The regular payments based on company performance. Now, they're not guaranteed. I want to clarify that right off the bat. Dividends are not guaranteed. But when you find the right ETF, right company, majority and potentially the regular payments do come. Now, this is totally separate from capital appreciation. So if you ever look at a fund, everyone talks about, oh, my funds went up 10%, went up 6%, went up 2%, whatever the number may be. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the payouts from a company or an ETF pre-scheduled either whenever they set those up. As you can see with the distribution frequencies, they have monthlies, they have quarterlies, they have annual, they have semi-annual, they have weeklies. My example would be like Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola is a great company, great shares, great stock, but the shareholders receive payments every quarter from the profits of the company. It's kind of preset how much the company is going to take of distributions and disperse it. That's why we call it dispersals to the shareholders. So I show you how the dividends really work as a company's profits. Company has to profit, and then a portion of the profits go back to the shareholders through dividend payments. Now, to confuse you even more, there are different dividends. There are qualified dividends and there are ordinary dividends. Okay? There are actually multiple things, and I'm not trying to confuse people, but there's even more that we have what we call return of capital of different dividends. So I'm going to keep it simple with just the two major ones, and that's qualified dividends and ordinary dividends. Qualified dividends qualify for different tax status. And what they normally have is a lower tax rate from a 0 to a 15 to a 20% taxation, depending on your income level. So yes, you could be getting income at a 0%. Now, the holding period requirement. Most stocks for more, you got to hold them for more than 60 days around a dividend payment date. And these are the things you always want to look at, especially in the qualified, is what is the requirements of holding the underlying stock. So like with Coca-Cola, you would have to hold, at this point would be 60 days, the stock, not the dividend, but the stock. So this is why you want to set up something that you're going to have sit and hold for longer periods of time. And then the common sources, most common stock dividends are going to come into this. This is generally preferred to lower your tax burden, especially in the retirement side of things. Now, ordinary dividends pay higher tax rates. They pay the regular income tax rates as you qualify when you do your tax returns. Now, there's no holding periods on these. You could buy the stock today, get a dividend tomorrow, and sell the stock the third day and get out and collect the money, and you're gold. So the common source of these are often real estate companies like REITs. Some ETFs are set up this way. So it's always the system of which way do you want to do. If you're just trying to generate dividend income for just everyday income, ordinaries are fine. But if you want to qualify for retirement, qualified is a great way of doing it. And there's so many different ways of playing these different dividends. Now we take some tax advantages. Where do you hold your money? What do you do with it? Well, you maximize your dividend income by minimizing your tax burden. By most people using a 401k or a Roth IRA or using a traditional IRA. Your 401ks a lot of times are employee-sponsored retirement plans. They go in pre-taxed contributions. So you're putting your money in because you're going to tax it on the way out. So your taxes defers the growth. And a lot of times employers use a matching, which is really free money, in a 401k. So if you're starting off brand new, if you're brand new at all this and you're into a job, you should be into your 401k where you're collecting they normally call it matching funds into the 401k. Helps grow your retirement bigger, faster down the road. A Roth IRA. Roth IRAs is you're putting money into a Roth IRA that is after tax contributions. So let's just sit here and say you have $1,000 you want to put into it. You already paid income tax onto it because it came out of your paycheck. You put that into the Roth, you don't have to pay tax onto it because it's going to grow tax-free. Now you have to have qualified withdrawals for the tax-free period, but you don't have to require distributions. This is really set up for tax-free retirement income. Now the traditional IRA is you're putting in that pre-tax contribution, you're tax deferred of the growth, and taxes are paid upon withdrawals. But you don't have the employee matching, it's not part of your company. These are just called traditional IRAs. So this is a big thing on the tax rate. So when you start adding in qualified distributions, non-qualified distributions, and then you're putting money into these and out of these, this is where it starts getting really confusing. So now you're probably already on information overload. You're trying to figure out what a qualified dividend is, a non-qualified dividend is. Oh my God, I got to talk about 401ks. I got to talk about IRAs. This is all the stuff I'm just overwhelmed with. I just want to retire all the way through. We're here to stop right now and just say, hey, here we're here to help you. Let's look at the very first step that you need to take. This is the simplest thing I put it, the easiest way to do it. So let's give you the first step. The question everyone always asks is how much money do I need for retirement? It's a magic question. You talk to anybody who is retired, they'll all say the same thing. Before they retired, they had this question, how much money do I need? And you can calculate and calculate and calculate, and you can talk to the experts, and they're going to tell you need $1.5 million. Well, how did they come up with that number? Well, you need $1.3 million. How did you come up with that number? I'll give you a personal side of it. I actually sat down with a financial advisor when I was 27 years old. Now, I know that's going to sound crazy. At 27 years old, I was already thinking about retirement. And I said, look, I want to retire at 55. I want to live like this. I got this whole thing I laid out to him. And the guy put it into his fancy computer at the time. And he comes back and he says, you need $1.3 million to retire happily at 55. He laughed at me. He literally laughed at me when I told him I wanted to retire at 55. He's like, no way. And all of a sudden, I'm like, great. I have a number. I have a target. I have a goal. I knew a number what I wanted to retire with. My question is, how did you get to 1.3 million? I can never figure this out. So I came up with this here, and it's something very simple. It's a calculating your profile size, a basic option. So what you really need to do is the fundamental formula. You need to know what your annual expenses are. I call cost of living. Okay. Then you need to divide that by your dividend yield that you're looking to get. And then it'll tell you your portfolio size that you need. Now, we're going to break each one of these down. You're going to ask, what is my annual expenses? How do I figure that? Well, it's real simple. Here we are at the end of the year already. Sit down and calculate, what did you spend? How much money did you spend? Now, this takes a little bit of homework, but it's actually a fun thing to do. Sit down and find out, how much did you spend on groceries? How much did you spend on your house? How much did you spend on your car? How much did you spend across the board? And it'll give you what your cost of living really is. Now, did you live the way you wanted to live? Is this the way it's going to be? And as you go down the road, you start looking at, am I going to have a car payment? Am I going to have my house paid off? What are all the costs of living that you have right now today? So you put that in there as your cost of living. You're going to divide that by what dividend yield that you can collect. And we'll talk about that to give your portfolio size. Let me give you an example exactly what we mean. So here's the scenario. I'm going to put it out there and say your annual expenses are about $50,000. That's very common for a family, for two people living together. Now we're going to sit here and say, hey, let's target a yield of 4%. Now I'm going to argue with you across the board on this one here. 4% is a very easy number. Most banks have CDs, most banks have savings accounts that are generating that 3 to 4% category. So 4% is not hard to obtain, and there's virtually very, very little risk at all. But there's another reason why I'm using 4% is because the old standard has always been 4% withdrawal of your funds. So if whatever money you have, if you withdraw 4%, is the old 4% rule, if you're familiar at all with that, is you take 4% of your portfolio and that's what you live on. So when I sit here and take my annual expenses of $50,000, I divide that by 0.04, which is 4%. Okay, that's going to tell me I need $1.25 million to retire. So when I sit back and think about it, when my financial guy said, hey, at 27 years old, you want to retire at 55, 1.25, he was figuring I'm going to need $50,000 and I'm going to only collect 4% off of my portfolio. So the portfolio size would generate approximately $50,000 in annual dividend income through a covered expenses with a 4% withdrawal rate. That's how easy it comes up to is how much money do I need to retire? You need to know what your cost of living is, and then you need to come up with your dividend yield. So right now you're sitting there looking at saying $1.25 million to retire with a $50,000 cost of living. I guarantee you probably at least 70% of the people watching this video right now are sitting back in their chair and saying, I'll never have $1.25 million. I'll never be able to make that. I'll never be able to generate that money. Well, I'm going to tell you, I agree with you. I don't want negative to anybody, but I agree with you. That $1.25 million takes 30 plus years to generate that money. And you're probably sitting there saying, I don't have that much time. So I'm going to give you a realistic option number 2. Same exact formula. I'm going to show you exactly the same exact formula. Your cost of living, your dividend, your portfolio size. I'm going to keep it all the same, $50,000. But what I'm going to change is one minor little thing. And we're going to put a 10% target out there for the dividend yield. Now, you may come back and talk to a financial person or talk to other people, and they're all going to tell you, oh my God, 10%, that's ridiculous. That's high yield. That's unsustainable. Well, I hate to tell you, but in today's times, 10% is fairly realistic. And there's a lot of things where we can show you how to attain that 10%. So when you take a look at this now at $50,000 at a 10%, how does $500,000 sound? What if the portfolio size would generate approximately $50,000 in annual dividend income that would cover expenses with only a 10% withdrawal rate? Now, how many people can look and say, I could retire with $500,000 if I find a 10% dividend and keep my costs under $50,000? The answer is yes. We make this thing not realistic. I could put 20% in there. I could put 30% in there. The realistically is what is the dividend that you can actually obtain? Well, we're between that 4 and 10%. And it gives you a number and a target to shoot for. So our starting point of retirement planning is very simple. Step number 1. We need to know our goal. What's our cost of living needs? How much money do we need and how much yield will we need? And I just shared with you, if you have a cost of living of $50,000 a year, your capital needs are anywhere between $50 to $1.25 million. Because your yield is going to be between a 4 to 12% category. But here's the next thing we need to work on. What is the right balance? What is the right number that we need to have? How much time do you have before retirement? Are we working on this on a 10 years and we want to retire? Are we looking at 30 years that we're sitting to retire? Or maybe we're only a year away from retirement. All of this works with every one of those steps and scenarios. Because we got to know that time frame. We need to know what our capital starting funds are. You may be starting with 0. You may be starting with $500,000. You may be starting with $250,000. I looked at a couple different reports. They said people in their 40s have about $150,000 preparing for retirement. I've seen people at the age of 50, 55 having about $250,000 getting ready for retirement. Growth of the funds. How much do we need to grow? We don't know that until we get into our cost of living. We don't know that until we have our capital needs. We don't know that until what our yield's going to be. So these are all the things that we start mixing up with. And this is why you get confused. But if you keep it simple of where we're targeting, this becomes a very easy program to work. So now we're going to talk a little bit about your portfolio. There's things called balance, yield, and growth. So when you're building a dividend portfolio, you must balance your income needs with your long-term growth potential. And there's different ways of having this. You probably hear these words. There's high yield strategy. So there's large immediate income streams. So if you're looking at, I'm going to put you at 55 to 60. You want to retire before you're getting, early, before you get Social Security. You want large income streams. You need big money up front. You go to conservative company profiles. You look for higher dividend situations. Examples are like Verizon and AT&T. Both of them are always paying between that 6 to 7% dividend yield. Okay, so when you put that in your calculator, 6 or 7, how much money do you need at that point? Then there's stable growth strategies. These are going to pay lower current yields. Okay, these are going to have a consistent dividend growth, and they're going to have that capital appreciation. Again, companies like Microsoft and Apple, when you look at them, their distribution, their dividend yields are very, very, very small. But they have growth of their fund. So remember the questions. How much do I need? What do I put in which category? Do I need income or do I need growth? And it all becomes down to what stage in life that you are. Everybody's going to need a little bit of growth because you want to make up for inflation. You want to make up for all the pieces of the inflation side of it, any bad times we have, good times we have. You always want a little bit of growth. The question is on the yield. You're really focused when you're going into retirement is you want yield. You want income as much as you possibly can. So this is why I always say, again, consider your time horizons and your income needs to give you a balanced approach so that you have a balanced approach between income and growth. Now, there are companies out there what we call dividend aristocrats. And this is a strategy that people use. And you probably hear someone like Warren Buffett, who's used a lot of these different companies to get themselves farther along the way. Dividend aristocrats are companies that continuously increase their dividend payouts for at least 25 consecutive years. That's pretty impressive. And I'm going to tell you this, the characteristics is this, a well-established, financial, stable company. They have a proven track record of returning value to their shareholders. They have a consistent dividend growth over decades, and the business models adapt to change. Now, some of these companies, and you can actually get a list of aristocrat dividend companies. But the biggest one I know of is Coca-Cola. And they always say this is in the utility and consumers group. We know Coca-Cola as a drink company, but there's so much more. And they've had 25 years of consecutive dividend increases, not just paying dividends. This is every single year they're increasing their dividends. So stable dividend growth through market cycles. Coca-Cola has been around forever. Okay. And they've continuously always increased. So one of these things is if you have plenty of time, you buy Coca-Cola. Now their dividend may only be, a couple percentage points. But as it grows, you keep growing, your dividend gets bigger. Procter & Gamble, another one. Johnson & Johnson, another one. And you look at these things. These are all in different categories. Every one of these in different categories. Consumer staples, healthcare. The whole thing is you're building a portfolio of different sectors, different categories, different areas. So you're looking again for yield versus growth. Now we're going to talk about high yield ETF options. This is an area I focus on all the time because these are the future and these are the things that I look at are what can drive people to retire early. That can also take myself and that what I've used. It's that instant diversification. ETFs offer a way to achieve instant diversification across a basket of dividend-paying stocks, funds, and it takes your risk and spreads your risk across multiple areas and not just over one company. Even though Coca-Cola is a great company, what if something happened just all of a sudden out of the blue? America decides we're no longer drinking soda, what would happen to Coca-Cola? And that's the risk that you take. Now we show you here is QQQI. Now this is a NEOS ETF, and it's based off of NASDAQ 100 high income ETFs. This thing focuses on NASDAQ, which if you don't know, NASDAQ is designed, and this one here goes after the top 100 companies. It has a very low expense ratio, and the dividend history is stable over time. It's not an aristocrat. It's not going to grow its dividend each and every time because it's in a different marketplace. It's how 100 different companies are going up and down and up and down, and they generate funds and they generate distributions and profits and income all from selling covered calls. So the risk factor is a little bit higher. Okay, it's on those 3 stars out of 4. If you had 4 or 5 stars, at 5 stars you'd be risk free. So this one has a little bit more risk, but you're getting a 13.74% distribution yield. Remember I told you we were looking at 10%? 13% has paid it for almost 2 years already. So it's a very kind of what I call a stable over time, has a little bit of growth, but it's working in the NASDAQ 100. All I'm trying to show you is the options that are out there. I'll give you something else. SCHD, probably one of the most funds that everyone has heard about when you're talking about retirement. And this is a Charles Schwab U.S. dividend ETF fund. It's designed for dividend growth. It uses U.S. large and mid-cap dividend stocks, its strong track record of dividend growth, and it's actually an ETF that is in the Dividend Aristocrat focus. Okay, they are focusing on those aristocrats. That's why it gets 4 stars for the risk factor. But look at the distribution yield. It's only 3.8%, right into that 4% category, right? But they grow their distributions by about 5% per year. So here's a fund right now that you could get into. If you have 1.25 million, you could put it all right into SCHD and you could retire comfortably. But realistically, how many people have 1.25 million to do that with? Now we take a look at SPYI. SPYI is another fund from NEOS that focuses just on the S&P 500. And this one here has a dividend of 11.64%. Now, why do I bring that one up? Well, the S&P 500 has pretty much always been between 8 to 10% growth each and every year. And it's been like that for 20, 25 years already. So this one here works on I call it the opposite. It's not trying to grow the fund, even though it does at 3.37% this year. But the distribution yield is 11.64. So they're taking the growth of the S&P 500, turning it into income. This is why high ETFs play a big part of your retirement portfolio. It gives you instant diversification, it gives you high dividend yield, and gives you some dividend growth potential and also fund potential. Now, all these numbers can change. I'm telling you right now, these numbers can change in a matter of minutes as the stock market opens, closes, and so on. So I'm just giving you a snapshot of while we're at it at this time in the video. Now, monthly paying dividends. Now, these are payers like REITs. If you don't know what a REIT is, it's a real estate investment trust that they go out and buy office buildings, warehouses, Amazon. You think Amazon owns their warehouses? No. Someone owns it. They rent it from them. So one of the companies I wanted to show you as an example is the Realtor Income, and its stock level is O. Look at their dividend chart over the past 5 years. Their distribution yield is 5.73. Their growth is at 2.87. Every year they have a growth, and they continue to grow their dividends, and they pay monthly. So this is a fund that gives you a steady, standard growth across the board. REITs are a unique piece, and it's a whole nother piece to use in the programming. They own and operate and finance real estate. Now, when you think real estate, you're probably thinking of your home. And there are people who are in REITs that will do mortgages. But think of the office buildings, warehouses, your car washes, your Arby's, your McDonald's. All those people are part of REITs because someone builds it and owns it and rents it out. Now, here's the unique thing with REITs. Most distributions, most income has to go out at dividends. Estimate about 90% of their income is going to go out as dividends. And really should say their income, which is more profits. They offer attractive yields, like we show here with realtor income. They're not going to be the high yields, but they're going to be steady, solid yields. Now we have the long-term success principles. We're starting to get into. I've explained to you the difference in high yields and so on. This is why I said we'll probably have to do more videos to explain each one of these segments deeper and farther into it. And I'm happy to do it. If you give us a thumbs up on the thing, we see the big thumbs up, you leave the positive comments below, I have no problem continuing adding to this portfolio of information. And also, I'll put it right now, don't be afraid. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. It tells me that you're listening, you're watching. We appreciate you. But let's get into long-term principles here. Diversify across different sectors. You don't want to all best be in tech. You don't want to be all just in healthcare. You want to spread it over. You want to be in healthcare, tech, utilities. Because if one goes down, you're out. If the odds of 2 going down, slimmer. Odds of 3, 4, 5 going down gets tighter and tighter and tougher that you're holding your own. It prevents the overexposure of a single sector. Now, this is all based on time. Reinvesting your dividends. If I'm sitting here at 40, 45 years old and I'm doing things and getting dividends, what do I do with those dividends? I would reinvest those back in, which is taking the money and buying more of that continuous fund. Reinvesting back in is like a snowball. Take a snowball, drop it down the hill, it slowly gets bigger, 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 and to the point where you can't stop it. It's especially important if your initial investment stages, like I said, the younger ages. It accelerates your assets accumulation. And adjustment for inflation. Focus on companies that grow their dividends. You want to select ones that are, maybe in the Dividend Aristocrats. It all basically goes back to our very first question. How much money do you need? How much of a yield do you need? So how do I get started? Well, simple things first. Open a brokerage account. Okay? Go to Charles Schwab, Fidelity. I'm not going to push one. Robinhood's another prime one. There's so many of them out there. Go out there and open up a brokerage account. Start small. You can start as much as $1. Okay? You can invest in high yield ETFs for initial diversification. You can gain experience by increasing your investment size over time. Make sure you start it up with your 401k if you're not at that point. Track your income. Track your brokerage provides tools that will give you the stuff to watch your income. How does it work? I could have easily put an example on here where Charles Schwab shows me, what I'm going to make each month, what I'm going to make in 12 months, what I'm going to make in the next future 12 months. There's so many tools out there that shows you in a brokerage fund that what you can do with your income. But the whole thing is starting with a brokerage account. Well, I also want to give you some helpful videos. All the videos are going to be linked down in the description, but hopefully this will help you well. Just my latest one is the top 8 monthly ETFs with no NAV erosion. This is a great one to look at if you're looking for something with how you want to invest for long-term investments as some top monthly income. Then we go to the top 10 ETFs with a minimum of 15% return. Again, no NAV erosion. Another great video to watch if you're closer to retirement and want to plan accordingly. And then the final video is a retirement on $500,000. Now, I'm not pushing $500,000 as the magic number, but I want to give you an idea. All of these give you the similar type ideas of ETF funds to use and all the pieces to set up a nice portfolio for retirement. So leave a comment down below. Hit the like button if you like what we're giving you here. Leave any questions or anything you have in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for watching. Press the like button, hit the subscribe button, and join. Leave any comments below and join our Patreon to support the channel. I'm Doug, the Retirement Guy.